see, a lot of good sized bullets here. I'll take a few of these home. There are absolutely loads of them here. I won't take them all, I'll take about a third of these, walk down and see what else I can find, just for identification purposes. Nice top, does feel a little bit slimy on the top, and as you can see underneath, it's got pores. No sign of infestation in these ones, so this is a good one. I'll take this. Know what we're having for dinner tonight? Okay then team, I've got a really good example of oyster mushrooms. I'll just pick one of these. You can see from its shape, it's a bit like an oyster shell underneath. Very small stem coming from the tree. Big long gills running all the way to the stem. On top you get kind of a buffish white to a dark grey depending on where you find them. These make fantastic eating. Take some of these home. You can't eat these ones. I just thought I'd point them out because they are quite interesting. They're dead man's fingers. Okay, so this is something you need to be really careful of. This one could be mistaken for a young blusher mushroom, but I'm fairly confident it's going to be a panther cap. Something you definitely don't want to eat. So whenever you're picking a mushroom, it's better to cut it off so that you don't take the roots with you, damage the whole fungus. You just want to take the fruiting body. this particular case, I am going to take the whole thing, just for identification purposes. So I'll take this one home. I'm going to sterilise my hands after touching this, because I'm fairly certain it's a panther cap. I will carry on. Here we are. So from the path, I thought I'd seen a penny bun. And I've got a bit closer. You can see it's a bay bullet. No, I'm not going to leave this one. You can see the insects and the slugs have got to this. But for identification purposes, you can see it's got the bay colour on the top. Looks a bit like a burnt Yorkshire pudding. Underneath it has the paws rather than gills. Gives it a sponge-like appearance, and as you can see it does bruise quite badly to the touch, so that helps with identification. On this camera, I'm not sure you can see it, but there are lines running on the stem, which is very similar, slightly lighter than the top, but very similar in colour. So I'll put this one back down, let the slugs finish this one off. So here we've got the red cracking bullets. Quite a few here. I'm going to take some of these, but not all of them. You generally find with these, about 1 in 5 is good. Seems to be an insect hotel, as you can see. We've got quite a good find for today. This is the blusher. It's quite a nice big mushroom. So we'll talk a bit more about this one in a moment. We found a lot of these. They're large bullets. Once you turn them over, you can see it's the paws of the bullet. A little bit sticky on top. And they're found near large trees, hence the name. Quite a few oyster mushrooms. It's always good to find these. Probably my favourite wild mushroom. And we've found some red cracking bullets, or red cracked bullets, depending on which book you reference. They're always very nice. They do spoil fairly quickly, so it's best to use these in soup or broths. They get a bit mushy once cooked. We also found this. Now I found this right next to the large bullets. At first I thought it was one, but when you turn it over, you can see it has gills. Now it's still an edible mushroom. See how the gills are cracking fairly easily. So that's the common yellow brittle gill. It's one of the Rusulas. You can see the gills falling onto my hands. But this one is safe to eat. We found these as well. That's the yellow staghorn. They're quite gelatinous, not much flavour of their own, but they do soak up the flavour of whatever you cook them with. And they add a bit of colour. So that's quite good. We also found these. That's a white staghorn. It's got a few names. These do taste quite nice, and they are much rarer than the yellow staghorn. I've also picked 2 more, but I wouldn't usually pick. That's because these ones are deadly poisonous. This is a panther cap. Now I picked it so that we can compare it to the blusher. So if you have a look at the 2 of these, could you tell those 2 apart? Now the way to tell is if you look on here, it's got those scaly bumps on top. They're a lot more solid on the panther cap, the deadly one. They can come off, but they are a lot more solid. You do get them on the blusher, as you can see in this bottom corner here, but they are far more removable on the blusher. You can also see the blusher is darker in the centre, and it gets paler towards the outer edge.
with the panther cap. It's a far more consistent colour throughout. In fact, if anything, it gets a little bit darker towards the edge. When you look at the stem, we've both got skirts. This skirt is fairly plain because it's white underneath. Whereas if you look at the skirt on the blusher, hopefully this camera can pick them up. You see there are striations running down the length of the skirt, and the skirt's a little bit more pendulous, it hangs down a little bit more. Also, this is a very important thing, that's how it gets the name. You can see this is where I marked, just took a section of the stem out of my fingernail earlier, and it's starting to bruise. The blusher will do that, so it'll bruise kind of a pinkish colour. You can see where I took a section out of my fingernail on the panther cap. That hasn't bruised at all, that stayed white. You can also see around the bottom of the panther cap there's a veil left over from where it's kind of like a sack that the panther cap grows out of. The blusher doesn't have one of these. If we flip them onto the backs, broken the blusher. You can see the spacing on the blusher. It's far less crowded than it is on the panther cap. It's a much more crowded gill. But as you can see, they're very similar. This one's safe to eat. This one's potentially deadly, really. It's not one. This is a very tasty mushroom, but unless you're absolutely positive, I wouldn't pick it yourself. I'm still not going to eat this one, simply because I've been handling both of these side by side all day, and I did bring them home in the same bag, so that one's not going to be eaten. Probably fine. You do need to cook it. You can't eat this raw. It still has toxins that need to be cooked out, but it is safe. If you eat this one, you're going to be very ill and potentially die. So that's a bit of a warning for you. Every one of these is safer as long as you know what you're looking for. Happy hunting. In case you were wondering where the meow was coming from, I've got Luna hiding down here, and we've also got Harvey sleeping down there.